Morning glory, America. Bonjour. Hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com studio. Happy to be here. I'm seeing some good news, but first of all, the most important thing, my public service announcement is this. No, you're first. I need you to remember Chris Christie.
I saw some of these news feeds that I've been watching upstairs of people sitting on the beach in Asbury Park. Get the hell off the beach in Asbury.
All right. Do you understand what I'm saying? I want to replay that again for the benefit of the young people who are listening across the United States or who have now got mom or dad or grandma or grandpa grabbing by them and saying and calling them on the phone and holding up the phone, and they're not able to get the Skype to work and you can only see half of grandpa's head. But they know what Chris Christie is saying, and Chris Christie is saying this.
So, to folks again, I saw some of these news feeds that I've been watching upstairs of people sitting on the beach in Asbury Park. Get the hell off the beach.
Get the hell off the beach and get out of the clubs. Now, I want to explain to you why I thought of that this morning. CBS News ran a montage of young people in Florida for spring break yesterday evening after I had left my quarantine to go and do a show because I'm self-quarantining because I don't want to get sick, and I'm not, thank God. Nobody I know is sick yet. But I know that there are worldwide 220,846 coronavirus cases. I know that 8,988 people have died and that 85,778 people have recovered. But I know the vector spread is vast, and I know that the number of cases around the world undetected is vast. And so I need you to get off the beach. I do not need to hear this from CBS News talking to college kids. Cut number 20.
If I get corona, I get corona. At the end of the day, I'm not going to let it stop me from partying. We've been waiting for Miami spring break for a while. About 2 months we've had this trip planned. 2-3 months. So we're just out here having a good time. Whatever happens, happens.
It's really messing up with my spring break. What is there to do here other than go to the bars or the beach, and they're closing all of it? It's really messing me up. I think they're blowing it way out of proportion. I think it's doing way too much.
Doing us bad. We need a refund. This virus ain't that serious. It's serious. It's more serious things out there like hunger and poverty, and we need to address that.
Yeah, we planned this a long time ago, and it was kind of up in the air if we still go, but we're here. I just turned 21 this year, so I'm here to party, so it's kind of disappointing, but we're just making the most of it. We met these other people in our little Airbnb spot, so we're just hanging out with them and trying to get drunk before everything closes.
It sucks, but we're going to make the best of it. We're enjoying ourselves. It sucks. And I'm from New Orleans, so this really sucks. However, we're going to enjoy ourselves. We having day parties all day. It's my birthday, St. Patrick's Day. Turn up.
We're just trying to roll with the boy. We're just living for the moment. We're just going to do what happens when it happens. When stuff closes, we're going to do it when it closes. But besides that, we're just trying to have the best trip we can.
I don't like you because you're going to get me killed.
That's the immortal Danny Glover. All right. So can we play that again?
I don't like you because you're going to get me killed.
It's Samuel Jackson, excuse me. One more time.
I don't like you because you're going to get me killed.
I thought it was from Lethal Weapon. Is it from Pulp Fiction?
No, it's from Die Hard with a Vengeance.
The point
You're
is
killing me, Smalls.
I don't like you because you're going to get me killed.
Well, you kids are going to get me killed. Actually, not me. You're going to kill your Nana and your Baba. You're going to take out Grams and Grandpa. You're gonna put.
You know what they're going to do? They're going to kill Mel Brooks. Is what they're going to do.
They are. They're going to kill everybody if they don't get off the beach and go home and binge watch. All right, that's my public service announcement. I just can't believe it. I really cannot believe it. All right, Chano had 0 infections yesterday. If you believe them, I don't believe anything they say. The new news on the hospitalizations in the United States are young adults make up 38% of the hospitalizations. And if I can explain to young adults why it's important that they participate in the social distancing, if not self-quarantining, it's simply this. The United States has a vast amount of medical resources. We have the greatest medical system in the world. But we don't build excess capacity. We don't leave wings of hospitals open. We generally evolve the number of beds and units, and especially intensive care units and isolation units, based upon past experience and need, so that the hospitals don't lose money and they can stay open. And so we have what we have, and that capacity has a little surge capacity, a little excess capacity. But coronavirus, because it attacks breathing, requires ventilators and respirators, and people have to go into isolation, and many have to go into ICU. That does not stop the other sorts of patients who typically arrive with heart attacks, strokes, diabetic comas, broken legs. It doesn't stop elective surgery for people who've been suffering in pain for years and need to have their backs fixed. I've done that a couple of times. It doesn't stop any of that stuff. And what is happening in the United States is we are afraid we will overwhelm the hospital system. We have a great hospital system. We have the best doctors in the world. They are the best trained doctors in the world. We have the science working around the clock. I am hoping we get great news on interventions as opposed to vaccines. Vaccines take 18 months. Interventions can take a lot less to treat those who've got it. But in the meantime, we have to suppress the virus to buy time. If I could explain it to you this way, we have a meteor coming towards us. Remember what was the name of the movie, Dwayne? The movie with Bruce Willis. Dwayne's now mad at me and not talking to me. It's really sad early in the morning. But there was a movie where the meteor was coming towards the United States. And everybody out there who says there's no meteor... Armageddon, thank you. I had a producer. He came in today. He leaves in about 5 minutes. He's clocking in and clocking out today. It's our system. Armageddon. There's a meteor heading towards the Earth. And just imagine that 20% of the people don't believe it. And those 20% of the people are absorbing the resource that we need to stop the meteor. They're using gasoline, and I don't know how it would be. They're using electricity, and we need all the electricity to somehow power up a laser to hit the meteor. I don't know. Imagine something. You are destroying hospital capacity because you are sending more patients there. Some of them will be you, because 38% of the patients are actually younger adults, not children. Thank goodness. Thank God this is not attacking kids. But you know what? Other kids with, say, cystic fibrosis, who have a long and great future ahead of them because we're making advances in that direction every day, they need sometimes to go into isolation, and they need sometimes to go into ICU. You're taking hospital capacity away from sick children. All right? If you're outside, if you're screwing around, you are denying children their right to have a spring break in the future. That's what you need to get your arms around. You have to be socially responsible. And the president's been very good about not calling anybody out for their behavior, but I saw that last night and I said to myself, honest to goodness, they have got to change. President, by the way, gave a presser yesterday, got a question about his low credibility. I like this. Cut number 13, Donald Trump at the White House yesterday.
Your credibility ratings are very low. There was a recent NPR poll.
Who are you asking that question?
I'm asking...
Because I see that they're very high. If you look, I'm 95% of the Republican Party. We just had a poll that was done by a very reputable group where I'm beating Sleepy Joe Biden by a lot in Florida, in the state of Florida, and in other states. So I don't really know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I love that. Get out of here. And besides, what are you asking that question for? Why are you asking that question? Why do you call the Chinese flu the Chinese flu? Cut number 10.
Okay, why do you keep calling this the Chinese virus? There are reports of dozens of incidents of bias against Chinese Americans in this country. Your own aide, Secretary Azar, says he does not use this term. He says ethnicity does not cause the virus. Why do you keep using this? A lot of people say it's racist.
It's not racist at all. No, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. Comes from China. I want to be accurate.
About Chinese Americans
please,
in
John.
This country.
Please.
The aides behind you. Are you comfortable with this term?
I have great love for all of the people from our country, but as you know, China tried to say at one point, maybe they stopped now, that it was caused by American soldiers. That can't happen. It's not going to happen. Not as long as I'm president.
China. It came from China. Honestly, we have got a lot of issues in the United States, especially this relief bill, which I'll talk about after the break. One of them is not what we call the the virus. Don't go anywhere, America. It's a very serious situation. You need every minute of today's Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. The virus has got America on its knees, but we're starting to stand up. I really do believe that. I mean, it was staggering. Fraser is down. Fraser is down. That was Howard Cosell during one of the great epic battles between Ali and Fraser. If I had a producer, we would play that for you. I'll tell you, we're down, but we're starting to get up. I look across the markets internationally, and I see a better day today than yesterday. Still red, but barely down a third of a point in Germany, barely down 1% in England. I think we'll have a good market today in the United States because we'll get more hints on the vastness of the stimulus that is coming. And I am so proud of Mitch McConnell and Tom Cotton and other Republicans. I'll have two of them on today, Mitt Romney, John Cornyn. When you see the people who are serious about the debt bringing forward $1 trillion package, and Hugh Hewitt says double it, you can't spend too much money right now. I understand we have an inflationary problem down the road, and I understand we have a deficit down the road, but I think this is great. By the way, markets are beginning to look like they're acting normal. Gold, for example, has gone up overnight to 1480. That's a normal response. The 10-year Treasury is back to 1.27%, heading towards a normal 10-year Treasury. My friends at Birch Gold Group, nobody did know what to do. One of the things you can always do when you don't know what to do is buy gold. Why? Because it will never crater. It will never, ever crater. If you have $5,000 or more and you want to get actual physical gold, you can call Birch Gold at 800-434-GOLD or go to hughgold.com. If you have a retirement plan you want to diversify. Now, I do not believe in selling stocks in a panic. They will rebound very quickly. Some of them are already back up nearly where they were, like Amazon. Netflix may be ahead. After the package comes out, people like Boeing will skyrocket. They've been shattered by the last week to 10 days. They'll all come back. It'll be such a sharp V. But, because we will get ahead of this virus and we will beat it. I have no doubt about American science. I have no doubt. This is not 9/11. When I was actually physically afraid that, there were other attacks coming. It is not anthrax. It is a virus. We will beat it. American science is amazing. But if you have a bond fund, it's done very well. It can't keep doing much better than it's doing. You may want to diversify your retirement bond fund into gold. When gold went down, that's counterintuitive. It's such a great opportunity, but you have to go to hughgold.com and talk to the people at Birch Gold Group. Diversify, diversify, diversify. I've said that for 20 years on the radio, and you need to take my word on it. 800-434-GOLD. I also got to tell you, my friend andrewandtodd.com, andrewandtodd.com, I talked to him at length yesterday because the mortgage markets are just crazy. And they're making great loans at 10-year and 15-year and 20-year loans for people who are investors and want to get an apartment complex, a 2-unit, a 3-unit. A lot of refinances are underway, but they don't want to lock right now. They don't, because interest rates are just wildly erratic. They will start to settle today. I think they will be settled by next week. I have told you what you should be doing in this period of time. You should be going to andrewandtodd.com. You're staying at home anyway, right? Go to andrewandtodd.com. Answer a few questions. Get the process going. Do not lock. Find out what you want to do. Get money out of your house to fix it. Buy a rental property with properties in your region, maybe discounted because of panic. Maybe you want to take advantage of this period of time to work on the house, whatever it is. Get ready to lock and get ready to appraise, but don't. andrewandtodd.com. Get right up to the starting point, because interest rates, when they resume to normalcy, which I think will be very quickly, they're going to be so great. They're great right now at 10 and 15 and 20, but the 30-year fix, you're going to have to wait a few days. Call Andrew and Todd with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, 888-888-1172. Just call them. Get started. Get up to the starting gun, the lock line, 888-888-1172. Stay tuned. Be courageous and be brave, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. In a season of shock, I am completely optimistic about this country's ability to bounce back. We're going to go big in the Senate. We're blessed to have Leader McConnell. We really are. An answer to prayer. He's an expert legislator. He knows when to say yes and when to say no. He knows how to go big when he has to go big. He is the right man in the right place at exactly the right time. I believe, by the way, Donald Trump has become the president we need at exactly the moment that his skill set is most called for. I believe Tony Fauci at 79 has waited his entire life to be right there. I believe the National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, there could be no better person with the perfect personality. He's an old and dear friend. Discount me for that. I just think he's the perfect guy to be handling the information flow to the president on national security issues. And I am so glad to have Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at Foggy Bottom. Mike Pompeo went on Fox News with Sean last night, Sean Hannity, and he said this explicitly about the People's Republic of China, cut number 27, the Secretary of State.
We did, in fact, call in the Chinese ambassador, and I spoke to my counterpart in China a couple days back. This disinformation campaign, which began when we began to call out this risk that was created not only for the Chinese people, but now we can see people all across the world where the Chinese government knew about this risk, had identified it. They were the first to know, and they wasted valuable days at the front end, allowing hundreds of thousands of people to leave Wuhan to go to places like Italy that's now suffering so badly. They tried to suppress this information. You talked about the means by which they did it, instead of trying to actually do the work to suppress the virus, which is what the world demanded. And the Chinese Communist Party didn't get it right and put countless lives at risk as a result of that.
He added, why does that matter to us? Cut number 29, the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, with Sean Hannity last night.
We would have responded immediately. Indeed, we did. All of the experts from all across, both from government and from the private sector, wanted access to all of the information about the structure of this virus, all the information that would have permitted us not only to start on mitigation and cures and vaccines, but also it allowed us to identify the way that this virus spreads and to begin to take the actions that could have kept this virus in a place where, unfortunately, we've not been able to keep it so far.
The National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, who is both the right arm of the president in the White House and the right arm of the Secretary of State in the White House. It's where the National Security Advisor coordinates. He's not a decision maker like Secretary of State or Secretary of Defense or the president. He's not in the chain of command. The traditional National Security Advisor's job is to coordinate and inform. But what they think matters, and Robert O'Brien made a speech at the Heritage Foundation yesterday. Here's National Security Advisor O'Brien at the Heritage Foundation, cut number 23. Listen closely.
Well, the first thing I want to point out is that this virus did not originate in the United States. It originated in Wuhan in Hubei province in China. It originated some time ago. Unfortunately, rather than using best practices, this outbreak in Wuhan was covered up. There's lots of open source reporting from China, from Chinese nationals, that the doctors involved were either silenced or put in isolation or that sort of thing, so that the word of this virus could not get out. It probably cost the world community 2 months to respond, and those 2 months, if we'd had those and been able to sequence the virus and had the cooperation necessary from the Chinese, had a WHO team been on the ground, had a CDC team, which we'd offered, been on the ground, I think we could have dramatically curtailed what happened both in China and what's now happening across the world. So, that's how it started. The president took very bold action when we realized the extent of what was happening, and we stopped air travel coming in from China. There were 20,000 people a day coming from China into the U.S. The president made a very courageous decision and was one of the first leaders of a major country to make that decision. I think he was the first leader of a major economic power to make the decision to stop the incoming travel of folks who'd been in China or who were originating in China. That bought the United States 6 to 8 weeks to prepare for the virus. He's done a number of other things. We brought into the White House Debbie Birx, a fantastic physician and ambassador from the State Department. And we appreciate Secretary Pompeo immediately moving her over to the White House at the president's request. He put Vice President Pence in charge of the task force, which has been meeting sometimes twice a day over the last almost 2 months to get our arms around Corona. So, look, this is a complicated issue. Pandemics and epidemics are some of the greatest challenges we face as a country. I think we've done a good job responding to it, but it is, look, it's the way that this started out in China, the way it was handled from the outset was not right. It should have been handled differently. But we are where we are right now. We're doing our best to work with the Chinese. One thing I'll point out is when we evacuated our citizens from Wuhan, the 747s that flew into that city were loaded with medical supplies, masks, personal protective equipment, medical supplies. And those were furnished not by the government. They were furnished by Americans. They were furnished by Samaritan's Purse and by the LDS Church out in Salt Lake and other Americans that wanted to help the people of China. And so I think we've done what we can. We've sent our condolences to China, but now we're in a stage where we're having to deal with the crisis here. And what I would urge everyone to do is to take heed of the CDC warnings. If you're feeling sick, don't come to work. If you've got a coworker who sneezes, send them home. Allow for some social distancing. Use hand sanitizer and wash your hands obsessively, and just be smart about things. Stay in good health, exercise, and we'll get through this as a country. But it's a very serious situation that we're facing, and Americans always rise to the occasion of these, and we'll get through it. But this is a tough policy crisis that we're facing.
That's Ambassador Robert O'Brien, the National Security Advisor. So proud of him, such a good friend. Another good friend is Senator Tom Cotton. He was blunt with Sean Hannity last night. He's always blunt. Tom Cotton is leading like Lincoln. I really think he's leading like Lincoln. He is, from 1858 to 1860, Abraham Lincoln went around the country saying hard things about true things. The truth about slavery. In the Cooper's Union speech and many other venues, Lincoln went and said hard things. Tom Cotton does the same in every venue. Cut number 24.
that China unleashed this plague on the world, and China has to be held accountable. That's why I'm introducing legislation that will say we're no longer going to buy our basic pharmaceuticals from China. There'll be a total ban on buying through the Department of Defense or the VA, Medicare, Medicaid, and so forth. And we're going to have incentives for manufacturers to start making those medicines right here in America once again. It's too grave a threat to let our health rest on Chinese drugs.
That's blunt, it's true, and the decoupling is progressing. Now, I believe General Secretary Xi could stop the downward spiral in the relationship between the United States and the PRC, were he to step forward and give the kind of speech we need to hear, which is, we are sorry, world. We are sorry, we will be better, even though we are the CRP and we're communists. We will not allow this to happen again. We are sorry. That would, it was us. We don't know how it started. It started here. It wasn't the American military. It was not what our propaganda outlets say. I'm firing all those people. Some people got crazy and they're very ashamed, but we're not ashamed. It's just what happened, and we will not do this again. We're sorry. We could have a reset. But we've got to get out of dependence. Peter Navarro, with whom I've sparred for years, God love him, been on this show. He's an old acquaintance from California. I've known him for 25 years. He was right about decoupling from China. He was right, doggone it, and I wasn't. I'm a Nixon guy. I thought the future was bright, but what we had is 50 years of arc. And it may have reached its height during Deng Xiaoping, but General Secretary Xi is not Deng Xiaoping. And I wonder if it's a Khrushchev moment for him, and everyone who knows their history understands what that means. Let me play you one more thing. Lindsey Graham, one of our favorite senators, talking about what's going on the Hill. Cut number 21.
Go big. The bottom line is I've been on the Hill all day. I haven't seen this kind of spirit since 9/11. Everybody's looking at each other as a ally, not a foe. People in America, you begin to see the best of the country. The young lady on the show before, delivering food to elderly people, allowing seniors to shop ahead of everybody else in grocery stores. It's going to take that kind of spirit to defeat this. But here's the problem. 80% of the workforce is going to be impacted by the containment policies. The money we're spending to deal with health care is going to pale in comparison with the money we spend to stabilize the economy. If you've been laid off today in South Carolina from a bar, a restaurant, or a hotel, I'm looking to make sure that we have wage replacement, that we replace your income as much as possible so that you don't have your life turned upside down. That's the number one goal of phase 3 for me.
And, the number one goal, Senator, you got to go bigger. I understand we got to take care of the employees, number one. Number two, the people that hired them, the bar, the restaurant, they can't go under. I have, 400 affiliates. I got a bunch of little radio stations. For example, they're mom and pop shops that have run in local places for 30 years. They serve the local community very well, and I'm on there, and I love being on there. I'm not going to name any in particular. Their advertisers have gone away, and they'll be back in 2 months. You got to bridge those radio stations. You got to bridge small newspapers. You've got to bridge every bar and every restaurant owner. It's not just the employees. Bigger, or those employees will have nowhere to go back to. And Amazon's hiring 100,000 people, and I own Amazon stock, and I say, yahoo! And Secure Space, they're doing great. The company I invested in that makes use of additional space that employers have and businesses have to park trucks overnight, they're doing great. Seabags.com is doing great. Another company I invested in. There are people that are doing great in this economy. Netflix is gone. I wish I owned Netflix. I don't. Netflix is like the best buy in the world. Amazon really is, but Netflix is great. But the Senate has to go bigger than big. Whatever they got, double it. Meanwhile, people starve. And for the people in Guatemala who are starving, I am so proud of this audience continues to write checks to Food for the Poor. It is the essence of Christianity when you are self-afraid, when you are yourself worried, to give $20 or $50 or $100 to starving children in Guatemala. Thank you. At the top of HughHewitt.com, you'll see a banner for Feed Starving Children. That goes to Food for the Poor. They're working in Guatemala and Haiti throughout the world. Thank you. Please keep giving. At HughHewitt.com. And you got to keep exercising. You heard the president say, you heard other people, Robert O'Brien said, keep out exercising, walking, moving. And if you're doing new kinds of exercise, you're going to hurt. You're going to use new muscle groups. Now, I always walk or run. I really shouldn't say run. I trundle now. My time is at 11 minutes a mile. When I was young, I ran 3:12 marathons. Now I run 3:12 miles. But ReliefFactor.com, here it is. Time to take it every morning at this time. I've got my lukewarm coffee because I'm in the studio without my coffee warmer, and I've got it working again. I worked all day on the studio. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. There it goes, coming down. ReliefFactor.com, $19.95 delivered to your door. Get it? Come right back. Michael Oren from Israel on what's going on there. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Dr. Michael Oren, former ambassador of Israel to the United States, former deputy minister, and a much valued guest and a friend. Dr. Oren, how is your family, extended family? Anyone got the virus? Everybody okay?
Everyone's okay, but very much locked down in the apartments. No school, no restaurants, no anything except for small grocery stores.
All right, now, Dr. Oren, the number of cases in Israel hits 529. I must tell you, I am counting on the United States and the Jewish state to save the world. I really am. I'm counting on the medical researchers of Israel and the startup nation to come up with what we need. What's going on there?
Well, what's going on is they're working feverishly to find the cure or even something that would slow the virus, literally round the clock. Meanwhile, Israel is being hailed throughout the world as an example of how a society can best defend itself against the coronavirus. We early on ordered clamp down closures, stopped flights from coming in. The economy is shut down, and we have set up emergency. We've taken hotels and making them into emergency hospitals, and now they've taken a national park not far from where I'm talking to you. And transformed it into a testing center with dozens of tents set up. So I think we're acting in a very good way. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in the throes of his political upheavals, is appearing nightly on television. He reminds me of President Roosevelt's fireside chats, and reassures the country, keeps everybody informed. But with all that, it is what can I say? It's an upheaval. With 30% of the population now unemployed.
Now, when the United States has this situation, we're going to hose the country down with money. I mean, we're just going to drop helicopter money everywhere, and that's good. I hope they double whatever they intend to do. What does Prime Minister Netanyahu, who brought free market economics to Israel, actually is responsible for the Israeli boom, along with his cabinet ministers, what does he propose to do for the economy?
Well, it's expanding unemployment pay. Certainly from 6 months to 12 months. It's cutting back on taxes. It's giving rebates. But at the end of the day, the Israeli economy, it's a $500 billion economy. It's not the $23 trillion economy of the United States of America. And Israel will be hard-pressed to recover from this. We're talking about a loss of about 45 billion shekels, about $4 shekels to $1, so you can do the math. And our Treasury today expressed doubt whether Israel will be able to bail itself out of this anytime soon.
Now, is the United States helping in any way?
No, nor have we asked the United States for any type of aid. We don't receive any financial aid to the United States. Military aid, yes, but no. And it's going to be, what can I say? I won't try to minimize it in any way. It's going to be quite traumatic for a great number of Israelis. I'm thinking also for my family. And we're gonna muscle through this. One of the things great about Israel, though, Hugh, is we've been through so many crises. And I'm talking to you from southern Tel Aviv. We've been subject to missile attacks, and we've been in bomb shelters. We're a very disciplined society.
Yeah, you and I have talked about the Yom Kippur War, where we came within a couple of days of seeing the state defeated, and that I don't think we're close to that. But what about your enemies? I know Iran is under extreme pressure. We don't know what the extent of the virus is there, but it seems to be a lot bigger than they're telling us. Are you afraid they'll do something rash to divert their domestic population from the fact that their mulocracy is completely unprepared for this?
Yeah, and not just that, they've had a 1-2-3 punch. It began with the protests against the regime, then the killing of their chief military guy by the United States, and then the downing of the Ukrainian jet. So that regime is really in the gutter right now. And yes, they may strike out to try to replenish their reputation. We have to be on our guard. But the fact of the matter is they're really ill, and their proxies are ill. They've managed to spread this virus around to their proxies, including the report here that the head of Hezbollah is sick with coronavirus. So the question is whether physically they're capable of taking on Israel at this time. My gut feeling tells me that no.
Are they keeping the IDF in Israel healthy as can be, segregated, sequestered, and ready to fight if need be?
Yes, they're all there's lockdown on all the bases. There are no passes out of the bases. Several bases have been transformed into IDF emergency hospitals should we need them. But the Army is on the line, guarding our borders, guarding our skies and seas, with a not reduced capacity.
Will there be a national unity government, which is clearly necessary?
Yes, but no one's willing to admit it just yet. Blue and white are still within the Likud are still jockeying. They're trying to get the Knesset to pass legislation. I can make you laugh on a day like today. Right? Yeah, of course, they won't talk about it. Of course, we have to have a national emergency government. This state of Israel has not faced an emergency like this, say, since the Yom Kippur War, where people were called up into military service for 8, 12 months, left their jobs, left their families. 50% of the GDP went to defense at that time. We were in deep debt. So we need a national unity government, whether the politicians want it or not.
Can a goy make Aliyah just so I can do Israeli politics all the time?
Well, maybe you could get us out of the gutter, please. Do us a favor.
Dr. Michael Oren, always a pleasure, my friend. God bless you and the state of Israel. I'll be right back, America. Hour number 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Straight ahead. That is funny.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Welcome back, America Morning Glory. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway, bringing you the news every day during this crisis. A very certain America on its knees is already getting back up, and joined now by Lieutenant General David Deptula, retired United States Air Force, to talk with me a little bit about that. Good morning, General. How are you? How's your family?
Hey, Hugh. Very good. Thank you very much. Trying to comply with all the instructions as hopefully everyone else is, so we can get through this in as successful a manner as we can.
You know, General, I was telling my friends in the Senate they need to include in this bill SGE, Special Government Employee Authority, so they can go tap people on the shoulder and say, you're in, and you're going to do this. You're one of the guys I'd go tap on the shoulder and say, hey, go run OPM or go ride like Bob Iger and David Deptula, that sort of thing. You willing to come back in and serve?
Absolutely. I tell you what, it's nothing has been more of a privilege than to have spent 40-some years serving the country, and I'd love to do it again. Still try.
That's what I thought.
In different ways.
Yeah. Now you run the key aerospace think tank, and I want to ask you about the relief bill that's coming through and the defense industry. Specifically, I want people to know I don't own a share of Boeing stock, but I see that Boeing is down to $101, down $22 yesterday, 17%. It's in pre-market trading below $199. People should know that in the last year, Boeing was trading, I think, up to $405. It's been battered. We cannot lose Boeing. Do you agree with me?
Yes, I do, Hugh. I try to stay away from specific companies, but in general, we need to protect our defense industrial base because it's absolutely critical. And one of the things that all Americans need to remember is that job one for our government is to provide for the common defense. Yes, we have to take care of the social issues that are confronting us, but we cannot let our guard down in important times like this in the context of maintaining a strong defense, and that means also having the ability to keep our military production facilities and infrastructure sustainable and alive so we can continue to do that number one job.
Now, the virus has struck people with pre-existing conditions particularly hard in a medical sense. The economic impact of the virus has hit those companies that were wobbly. Boeing had its 737 Supermax problem. Raytheon has been hit badly. Meanwhile, Northrop Grumman has gone up a lot, et cetera. Still, I believe that the stimulus for the defense sector should be broad. We should be buying ships and planes. Honest to goodness, that's what I think. I think the Congress agrees with me. What do you think, General Deptula?
Well, absolutely. We cannot. I have to tell you, we have adversaries out there that, while they've been affected as well, they're taking advantage of the current situation. So we can't afford to let our guard down to make sure that we continue the defense programs that have already been invested in to assure a defense of the United States and its people in an era of increasing great power competition. And
now,
that means that industries that are out there that are a critical element of our nation's defense need to continue to be sustained to maintain the capabilities that are required in each of our military services.
Now, they've got to be specific, and I know that the senator from Mississippi is leading that part of the task force on figuring out what gets going where, and he'll take care of the Navy to Navy guy. What ought they to be buying in the Air Force side? What planes, what production lines? Would they do something as radical as, I don't even know if it's possible to restart the F-22 line. It should never have been closed. But what would you recommend they specifically line item and pump money into to create jobs and a sense of security for the industry? That's really what we're talking about here.
Well, again, the United States needs to have a military that is capable of executing the national defense strategy. I always liked, and you know that we've talked about this in the past, but our production needs to be tied to what the national security strategy dictates. And the fact of the matter is we have a relatively new national security strategy that acknowledges and recognizes the growing threats from China and Russia in high-end fights. You know, we have been engaged in counterinsurgency operations for the last 20-plus years, and we've allowed our high-end capabilities to atrophy. And when I talk about high-end capabilities, I'm talking about our stealth aircraft like the F-35. We not only cannot allow this situation to eat into production capability, we need to increase the production of aircraft like the F-35, and the other one that is critical to our nation's defense is the B-21. And we haven't completed the research and development phase yet. When we do, we need to continue and make sure that there are sufficient funds available that increase the inventory of these new aircraft, because we've got a geriatric Air Force. We're flying the youngest B-52, which, by the way, was made by Boeing, is over 55 years old. So we have to remember that we've dipped into and we've neglected recapitalizing our air forces for the last 30 years. So those are two that come to mind right off the bat, but there are other ones too. The new training aircraft, the T-7, is necessary because T-38 that we have, that I learned to fly on back in 1976, has been around since the Eisenhower administration.
So, General, when you say recapitalize, this is what I'm getting to. I believe that in the Senate bill, they could actually set aside and dedicate and give to the company, actually transfer the money to the company, everything they need to build the entire Columbia class and the entire B-21 force, and that the company is charged as an endowment with, they could fund that. The signal that would send to markets about those companies would be so extraordinary. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you're on to something, Hugh. Buying the entire amount, I mean, we haven't, the Air Force in particular has talked about a minimum of 100 B-21s. The fact of the matter is, if you look at back to my comment on the defense strategy, we need a minimum of 180. Again, we're not to the point where we can crank those out yet because the development is still there. But in terms of assuring that the investment is available, I think you're on to something.
What is that total for 180 B-21s?
Oh, in terms of dollar amount, I don't have that off the tip of my head, but you're looking at a ballpark of not more than $550 million an airplane. So
so you're talking about $90 billion.
Yeah, that's a chunk of money.
Well, yeah, but we're about to spend $1 trillion, and I would say spend $2 trillion. And what you're doing is you're just putting a marker behind an industry, a company, and all those downstream jobs, because the B-21 is not just Northrop Grumman, and I don't want to share Northrop Grumman. Would you explain to people the defense supply chain to build that airplane?
It's an excellent point, Hugh. There are literally hundreds of companies and associated personnel that go into building any major weapon system. That's because these weapon systems, whether it be a Columbia-class submarine or a B-21 or an F-35, have elements of them that are so specific that they're spread out around a variety of different companies. So it's like you said, it's not just Northrop Grumman. There are parts and pieces, for example, on the F-35, which the major contractor is Lockheed Martin. The center section of that airplane is made by Northrop. There are other parts that are made by Boeing. There are parts that are made by Honeywell. There are engines that are made by GE and Pratt and Whitney. I'm speaking in general, not any one particular system, but you can see that whether it's avionics, whether it's the actual landing gear, whether it's the radar, whether it's the structure itself,
you know,
all made by a variety of different companies.
General Deptula, thank you so much. I'm going to push the idea forward with Mitt Romney and John Cornyn. We ought to capitalize acquisition, thereby sending a message to the country that we're going to be fine, and we are going to be fine, and we're going to be number one superpower forever. Now is the time. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, General Deptula. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt in the middle of a crisis. This is where you come to listen. I know that. Thank you. One of the things I ask my audience to do is be part of taking care of the world when the world needs to be taken care of. Food for the Poor is doing that. And I know this is not a season where people are leaning in to giving, but that's exactly what we're called to do. To go to hughhewitt.com, find the Feed Starving Children banner at the top, and make a contribution. Mothers all over Guatemala are praying that you will help today, as Food for the Poor, as Alice Marino tells us.
I just cannot imagine going through what they go through every single day. These mothers want the same thing that us as mothers want for our children. If I was born into poverty like that, would I have the strength to do what they do? And that to me just reminds me, God, thank you for bringing them to us so they can remind us and make us humble.
You know, for Americans, including me, for the first time ever, have confronted an empty shelf. First time in their life, an empty shelf. That shelf will be restocked. We've got plenty of food. We got plenty of TP. We got plenty of everything. It'll get there. We're figuring it out. Took a week, already figuring it out. It will never get to Guatemala. What will get there is food and clean water if you support Food for the Poor. Think about your shock, then think about the desperation in places like that, and please be generous. You can call Food for the Poor, 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-HOPE. Or go to hughhewitt.com and go to the Feed Starving Children banner at the top. Let me also tell you about andrewandtodd.com. I talked to Andrew Del Rey yesterday. As I said, Andrew's been a friend for 20-plus years. Todd was on the phone as well. I asked them to explain to me what's going on in the mortgage securities-backed industry. When the Fed comes in and says we're buying mortgage-backed securities, and they will, part of the relief effort, part of the stabilization program, interest rates will become normal. At that point, everyone's going to want to either refinance or buy a investment property. It'll go right back because the interest rates will be low for some time. Right now, it's not a great time to lock. It's actually a bad time. Even though the 10 years at 1.27, it might stabilize today, but it's been kind of crazy. It's good on the 10, 15, and 20-year loans, but it's not so good on the 30-year. And what's great about andrewandtodd.com, they'll never sell you a bad loan, ever. They'll say, let's get you ready to lock when stability returns in a week or 2 weeks. That's why you do it. You're staying at home right now. Refinancing is kind of a pain in the neck. People know that. Buying a house, my gosh, what a nightmare. I'm never doing it again. I'm 64, got my house, it's paid for. I don't have to worry about it. But if you're a senior, by the way, and you're worried about you just lost a bunch of money in the market, what are you going to do for cash? You can always get a reverse mortgage. Those are still working very fine. andrewandtodd.com. A reverse mortgage is basically a loan on your house. It's a line of credit on your house. And they now have super reverse mortgages for people who previously were capped at $500,000 or $600,000. Now you can get a reverse mortgage on your property up to $1 million, depending on your equity in the home, maybe a little bit more. Just give Andrew and Todd a call at 888-888-1172. They're lenders. They're the real deal with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're direct lenders, one of the big ones in the private market. 888-888-1172. They're the best, most trustworthy people in the world. Go and do it. I've got to say, President Trump put together a heck of a task force. He put Vice President Pence in charge of it. And I love these press conferences. I watch every minute of them. Mike Pence yesterday at the White House, cut number 14. Cut number 14.
Now, with regard to testing, I'm pleased to report that we're increasing the number of tests being performed by the thousands every day, thanks to the public-private partnership.
It's glitching. What he was saying is we're just soaring in testing. America was knocked to its knees. It's getting up. It always gets up. Always. I'll be joined after the break by Utah Senator Mitt Romney, one of my favorite people in the world. And I'm so glad the Senate has his expertise right now. Rarely has a senator known so much about how the private sector work as does Mitt Romney. Stay tuned. The governor, that's what I call him and always will call him, joins me next.
Don't forget to sign up for the Hugh-niverse. All of Hugh's broadcasts on demand, the after show, which in my opinion is worth the price all by itself, Dwayne FM, and all sorts of bonus content. www.hugh-niverse.com.
Welcome back, America. It gives me great pleasure to welcome back a dear friend, Governor Mitt Romney. He'll always be governor to me. He's now Senator Mitt Romney. Welcome back, Governor. Good to have you.
Thank you, Hugh. It's good to be with you again.
I've been keeping Mrs. Romney in my prayers because she is one of those seniors with an underlying medical condition. How is she? How's your whole family?
The family is well, and Ann is doing terrifically. She keeps on riding horses almost every day. I think she thinks that keeps her healthy.
That is terrific to hear. Now, Dr. Fauci told me, you may not remember this, Governor, the first time I met you in 2006, the first question you asked me is, are you a grandpa? I said, no, but I am now. On Tuesday, Dr. Fauci told me I can't go see my grandchildren, even though my daughter is alone and my son-in-law is deployed and there are three of them. I can't go help her. Are you guys on lockdown from your wonderful, you've got like a gang of grandkids.
Yeah, I've got 25 grandkids now, and but the truth is I can see them as long as we keep social distance, but I'm in Washington, and they're all over the country, so I can't see them in person yet.
And you are Utah's senator. They had an earthquake yesterday. How is Utah coping with the earthquake?
Well, they had to close the airport down because water main broke at the airport, and so they closed it down for most of the day. But it's back operating. It was 5.7 on the scale, which is severe, but nowhere near like what we've seen in California in the past. So things are back to normal.
All right. Now, Senator Romney, I said yesterday or 2 days ago in a Washington Post column, I'm so glad you were in the Senate for a time such as this, because you've got to help the private sector. I doubt there's anyone on the Hill who knows more about the private sector. There may be people equal to you in your experience, but I don't think anyone surpasses it. What do you think the Senate ought to do to save the private sector from this period, this season of shock?
Well, there's no question that what we need to do is to get some funding out to small businesses. I recognize it's going to be in the form of a loan, but those small businesses that keep their employees and keep paying them, that loan is almost certainly going to be forgiven down the road. So we want to get money out to restaurants and salons and all the small businesses that are having to shut down as a result of the social distancing we've got going on. And then there are some larger enterprises which are critical to our economy, critical to our national security, like airlines. People aren't flying, but we don't want all the people that work there to be laid off, and we don't want the airplanes to stop flying, so we're going to need to get some funding to them as well. And I hope our Democrat friends understand that the reason we're doing this is not only to save the economy, but to save jobs of millions of Americans.
Now, Governor, there are many industries that are critical, and I know the airlines are one of them, but I think I'm in a critical industry, and I know there are a lot of mom-and-pop radio stations out there. Indeed, there are a lot of networks out there that are suddenly without advertising. Are you going to go big in terms of identifying where those businesses are and actually, I mean, NBC doesn't need any help, and Netflix doesn't need any help, but there are a lot of people who need help.
No question about it, and that's why this rescue package that we're working on in the Senate is designed to provide funding to any business of 500 employees and smaller, all right? So people can go to their local bank. It'll be an SBA guaranteed loan. The loan will surely be forgiven down the road if people maintain their employment. And that's going to be designed for guys like you, but also for the enterprises that I described, little restaurants, salons. But there are a lot of enterprises that are hurting right now, and they're going to start laying off people unless we get some money to them. We'd rather have the employers paying those people than have them show up at the unemployment office.
Now, Senator Governor Romney, let me ask you about bigger companies, but they're not giants, but say Hillstone Restaurants. They've got 2,000 employees, 4,000 employees. They're above the employee, but they're a restaurant business. Will they get help?
Well, one of the packages is designed to help larger enterprises, and that's the one that I mentioned with regards to airlines. It actually will have a facility a great deal larger than just what's needed for airlines.
Oh, good.
It'll be administered by the Treasury Department, and it'll be for those enterprises that are larger, that are in difficult circumstances. How many will qualify is a real question. But those enterprises that are really key to the economy, key to national security, key to our infrastructure will surely be high on the list.
That's great, because I know a lot of the restaurants in the country are in chains, and those chains have a lot more than 500 employees, but they're all going down if we don't get them bridge loans. Now, Governor, can I talk? You, as in your Bain days, you knew what capitalization meant. I think right now we can recapitalize the defense industry for 10 years and send a signal that would be so incredible if we pre-purchase the Columbia-class submarine, the the B-21 strategic bomber. Are you helping the defense people understand what recapitalization and transfer of the funds for 10 years of acquisition would do or mean?
Well, I'm not on the Armed Services Committee, but I do talk to the folks on that side of the aisle or on that side of the building on a regular basis, and something which I don't think we understand, which is people around the world say, wow, America spends so much money, more than anybody else on national defense. But do you know what percent of our national defense spending actually goes to procurement? 15%. 15%, Hugh. The great majority of our money is going to veterans, going to current members of the armed forces, going to operations and maintenance. Now, there's some research as well. That's about 10%, R&D. But only 15% is going to procurement. And if we're going to get serious about improving the base of our military equipment, we're going to have to make a much more substantial investment than we are right now.
What do you think, Senator Romney, of forward appropriating the acquisition of the entire F-35 fleet, of forward appropriating the B-21? The B-21, I just asked General Deptula, it'd be about a $100 billion transfer to Northrop Grumman that they'd have to bank, but the signal it would send to the country would be so extraordinary. That's recapitalization. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's an interesting idea. No question about that, Hugh. Although right now, I think the Senate is entirely focused on what do we do to get money to people who need it. We talked about helping small business and large business. I'd also note that we're talking about getting money to individuals that need it to help rebuild the economy when we come out of this COVID-19 crisis. So we're talking about, if you will, giving people a rebate, sending back $1,000 a person, $500 per child to people. That may change in negotiations with Democrats, but that's the priority right now. And then we'll probably get on to, I think, a very good idea of making long-term commitments to our military foundation.
Well, I love Romney Bucks. That's what it's been christened. That was your idea. I think that's a great idea to, again, ease immediate. But I'm trying to send signals to the economy. I'm hoping you will send signals. Let me talk to you about the education sector. I talked to a college president, not Hillsdale. I haven't talked to Hillsdale's fine. They got a great endowment. But you're a BYU grad. You're a Stanford guy. You know every institution, from large to small, from preschool to graduate programs, has been shaken. Anybody looking at that? Anybody thinking about a per pupil grant, for example?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if anybody is looking at that right now. The Health Committee on which I serve is focused right now on healthcare and getting funding, getting masks, getting tests, getting funding to hospitals. We get a lot of hospitals that are closing down their elective surgeries. That's where they make their money. They're opening doors to COVID-19 patients. So getting help there is the highest priority. But, there's no question the educational institutions are not going to be getting a lot of checks coming in from their students because students have gone home. So there's going to need to be some help there at some point as well.
Yeah, I just think everybody is kind of staggered. Now, talk to me about the financial literacy of your colleagues. You got great legislative colleagues, but they've been on the Hill for a long time. It's a seniority-based system. Are they actually listening to you as a guy who did this? I mean, this is what you did long before you became governor of Massachusetts. Do they get that? Or are they open to the ideas?
Well, there are 53 Republicans, and Mitch McConnell has recognized that the normal process of committees dealing with each of these issues is a process that is too slow. You've heard the expression in the law, which is the wheels of justice grind slowly. Well, the wheels of Congress grind even slower. And so Mitch has cut through all this by organizing task forces, 3 or 4 task forces dealing with each aspect of the rescue effort. And I'm on one of the task forces, which helps individuals and families. And we're working pretty quick. We've each drafted and will have on Mitch McConnell's desk this morning legislation on each of the major initiatives I've just described. And that's record speed for this institution. Now, of course, we got to deal with our Democrat friends and see what they want to do and compromise and make something happen. But yeah, I'm sure I get at least as much listening time as I deserve. There are a lot of us that have points of view, but also there's a really superb staff that has worked on many of these issues for a long time. So we're getting a lot of input from people in the private sector, from individuals that are weighing in and calling in. So a lot of input. And I'm not by any means the know-it-all in this institution. I do have some perspective, and I don't feel like it's being ignored.
Well, your humility is admirable, but your expertise is more important to me than your humility. Just tell people they don't know what they're talking about, please. Now, Governor, I want to turn to something else. You know how much I respect you. I think there is a problem. In addition to flattening the curve of the disease, we have to flatten the cruelty curve and the partisanship curve in the country during this period of time. Do you see that happening?
I think it's very hard in a society as divided as we are right now and as polarized around politics as much as we are for people to put down their political brush. And you're seeing that on both sides of the aisle. I don't think it sits well with the American people. I think the American people want to see answers. People across the country are very concerned, as well they should be, for their health. They're also concerned about what's happening in the market and in the employment sector, because they know that what happens in the market is going to affect jobs and paychecks. So people are concerned, and they really do want to see Washington come together and get the job done. I think that's why the first package that was passed yesterday, even though it's a small package, it was a step forward. It was bipartisan. Nancy Pelosi and the Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin worked it out. And Senate passed it. I think that's a good signal that we're working, and hopefully we'll have more good signals coming down the road here.
I saw Governor Cuomo compliment President Trump and President Trump compliment Governor Cuomo. And I tweeted, more of this, more. Do you think we're going to get more of that?
Well, it depends on what happens, of course. I think a lot of people are upset about the things that did not go well. It has taken us way too long to get testing out to the American people. It's kind of embarrassing to see how well South Korea did, and then to see us lagging so far behind. It's also, I think, a little frustrating for us to recognize that our healthcare workers don't have the protective gear they need. How could we have been so ill-prepared? And that's not an indictment of this administration. It's just an indictment of Congress and government generally. Why didn't we do a better job preparing for this? And by the way, we should have closed off European travelers coming in here earlier than we did. So, there will be plenty of time to talk about the mistakes made. But at this stage, let's look forward and say, let's get the job done as quickly as we can and protect as many people as we can, both in health and in their paycheck.
Last question, Governor. I talked to Tony Fauci at length on Tuesday. He told me the testing issue, look, CDC screwed up. They had a technical issue. No one is to blame. And I accept that. But I also asked him in 1918 and 1920, based on the book, The Great Influenza, the disease then went through 12, quote, passages. I used the term iterations, and emerged more deadly on the other end from spring to fall of 1918. This virus could do the same thing. Are you telling your colleagues this might not be the beginning of the end, it might be the end of the beginning?
I think there is a recognition of that. At the same time, Hugh, I think one aspect of this disease that's encouraging, and that is that very young and young people seem not to have anywhere near the same kind of mortality as older people, which suggests at some point the older people are going to need to make sure they stay in place and they self-quarantine, but younger people are going to be able to get back and get this economy going again, keep our jobs. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to turn the corner. Don't know when, but I think at some point here we're going to be able to make a change.
Oh, I lied. One more question. You were governor of the Commonwealth, the greatest medical industrial complex, Mass General. Brigham, you know all these hospitals. Do you expect American medicine and science to catch up with this disease sooner rather than later?
It's not going to be at the hospitals. It has to be in these, what our Democrats call the dreaded pharma companies. But it's the pharma guys who do so much of the research. And, of course, there are labs at the hospitals and teaching institutions that will also be doing research. But, we've never been able to figure out how to stop the common cold or how to stop the common flu. So, I'm hoping for a cure. I'm hoping for treatment. I'm hoping for vaccines. But I think we have to proceed whether or not we have those answers in hand.
Senator Mitt Romney, Governor Mitt Romney, thanks. Keep coming back. Appreciate your working on this around the clock.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. Yeah, that'll let me do factor. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Here's the conclusion of my interview with Governor Romney that went into the break. Senator Romney, here it is. Last question, Governor. I talked to Tony Fauci at length on Tuesday. He told me the testing issue, look, CDC screwed up. They had a technical issue. No one is to blame. And I accept that. But I also asked him in 1918 and 1920, based on the book, The Great Influenza, the disease then went through 12, quote, passages. I use the term iterations, and emerged more deadly on the other end from spring to fall of 1918. This virus could do the same thing. Are you telling your colleagues this might not be the beginning of the end, it might be the end of the beginning?
I think there is a recognition of that. At the same time, Hugh, I think one aspect of this disease that's encouraging, and that is that very young and young people seem not to have anywhere near the same kind of mortality as older people, which suggests at some point the older people are going to need to make sure they stay in place and they self-quarantine, but younger people are going to be able to get back and get this economy going again, keep our jobs. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to turn the corner. Don't know when, but I think at some point here we're going to be able to make a change.
Oh, I lied. One more question. You were governor of the Commonwealth, the greatest medical industrial complex, Mass General. You know Brigham, you know all these hospitals. Do you expect American medicine and science to catch up with this disease sooner rather than later?
It's not going to be at the hospitals. It has to be in these, what our Democrats call the dreaded pharma companies. But it's the pharma guys who do so much of the research. And, of course, there are labs at the hospitals and teaching institutions that'll also be doing research. But, we've never been able to figure out how to stop the common cold or how to stop the common flu. So, I'm hoping for a cure. I'm hoping for treatment. I'm hoping for vaccines. But I think we have to proceed whether or not we have those answers in hand.
Senator Mitt Romney, Governor Mitt Romney, thanks. Keep coming back. Appreciate your working on this around the clock.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. I'm so glad that Mitt Romney is in the Senate. for a time such as this. His deep experience in the private sector commands respect, and they will. I'm sure Mitch McConnell's listening to him. Whatever they're doing, they should double it. If it's $1 trillion, it should be $2 trillion. They need to go above 500 employees. They got to go to 2,000 employees. More importantly, they've got to hit revenue. Businesses with revenues of up to, $500 million a year are being impacted. If you're genuinely a giant, people will know you have trouble like the airlines, but it's the smaller companies that need help. And I think of restaurant chains with thousands of employees like McDonald's, they're all staggered. Everybody needs a bridge loan for 2 months. It's basically it. Everybody needs to get a bridge loan for 2 months, and they got to keep working, and they got to keep paying people even if they're sitting around. Now, you can't be sitting around. You need to, if you're watching on Univision, you need to get your relief factor and go out and walk and run, and then walk and run some more, and then walk and run some more. You can't go to the gym, but your new muscle groups, if you've been a lifter, you're switching over to walking and running, your hamstrings are going to feel bad. Well, support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that accompany exercise and aging. You got the bad back, the bad shoulder. I still have my rotator cuff tear. I can't go to PT. Not going to go to PT. Just going to keep walking and running. So I'm doubling down on my relieffactor.com because it works. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. Thousands and thousands of you join me every day in doing what I do, which is take it in the morning. Now I'm taking it in the evening as well because I'm upping the distance. Because I got time. You walk alone. Touching Mrs. Hewitt's got the bad ankle. She's taking it. We're all in this exercise mode. More walking, more running. You need more Relief Factor. $19.95 gets you started. It will be delivered to your door. Take advantage of it and get out there and walk. Fresh air is great for you if you're walking alone. All right, just social distance, and those walking and running paths are full in Virginia and the Beltway, and that's good. Makes me smile. You know what else you can do during this period of time? Financial checkup on your house. AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com. 888-888-1172. You got a time on your hands? Do an audit of your house. Meaning, have I got the best mortgage for my house? Send the details. You just sign on to AndrewandTodd.com or call them at 888-888-1172 and say, I've got X in Y. You give them your address. You give them your financials. They'll say, you should do this. If you're a senior citizen, you've never had the time to check into a reverse mortgage because they're actually sweet deals for the right people. They've raised the limit. They're now jumbo reverse mortgages. 888-888-1172. Get in line. Don't lock. You don't want to lock right now. You don't want to pay for the appraisal or order the appraisal. Usually AndrewandTodd.com, pay for the appraisal. You just want to get all the forms done and be ready when the mortgage industry gets on its legs, which may be today or tomorrow. It looks to me like everything's getting kind of normal today. And it's going to be an interesting day. I've been watching all day long. But I have a feeling like the imminence of the vast Senate bill is causing people to calm down. When you are ready, have all your paperwork done at AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Come back. Chuck Todd talks to me about broadcasting in the age of cholera. It's like love in a time of cholera. Arthur Brooks, America's expert on happiness. He'll be America's expert on fear. And Texas Senator John Cornyn. Lots ahead in hour number 3 of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Glory America, bonjour, hi Canada, greetings. 6 million people listening to me every day, and I am doing my best in this time of fear to just assure, inform, and encourage. And I want to talk with my friend Chuck Todd about broadcasting in a time of fear. Good morning, Chuck. First question, how are the Todds and how is the Meet the Press family?
We are all good. You know, we're spread around. Not my family, of course. I have 2 teenagers climbing the walls. That is a unique challenge in all of this. But you know, we are learning to operate on a lot of Slack, a lot of phone calls, a lot of conference calls, Slack, video conferencing. But I'll be honest with you, Hugh, I miss people.
Yeah.
I do.
Now,
I miss people.
You know, my buddy John, your colleague John, is my age, and we have been. I just talked to Mitt Romney about his wife Ann, who's got an underlying condition and is in the target zone.
Yeah.
What's John doing differently? Because senior, I'm just staying home, right? I can broadcast from home. I got a Comrex. What's John doing differently?
You know, he's a pretty healthy guy. He's taking all the precautions. I mean, you know, but no more or less than I am on that front.
And how about Andy?
We're all doing the precautions, but I haven't. You know, I'll tell you the bosses, you know, the execs, and they haven't had a sec to focus on editorial. You know, I feel for them. I mean, look, those of us in the trenches are focusing a little bit on editorial, but every day, every hour, there's a new staffer, there's a new person who has it. There's a new decision that has to be made. Do you shut this part of the building down? Do you do this? So it is. I can tell you. I mean, my bosses have unique challenges for them as well.
Yeah, you know, I think Andy Lack is one of the most experienced guys I've ever met. I'm sure it's great to have him in the building. Talk to me a little bit, Chuck, not about any particular issue, but how you are approaching broadcasting in a time of fear. Because it's like a meteor approaching. That's what I've been trying to explain to people. The kids aren't getting it yet.
Yeah.
It's like a meteor approaching.
You know, it's just what you said about doing the best on facts. But every day, you know, I'll be honest, every day I look up and I say to my team, all right, what do we think's not breaking through? Right? What do we think, you know, why is it that people aren't taking this? You know, why is it that we had this issue with so many people at St. Patty's Day, things like that? And so, you know, always trying to start with the health story, number one, for instance. I think I'm one of those that I will cover the economic story when there is news, but I don't think that should be our focus. I think our focus has got to be on helping people understand the health crisis here, the economic aspect that's part 2 of this war, you know, unfortunately, and you can't focus on it too soon. I worry that we're focusing on it too soon, and then we're not focused on what we need to be focused on, which is acquiring hospital beds and hospital equipment.
You know, Chuck, there's a book, The Great Influenza, which I've been urging everyone to read since January. It's kind of early to the alarm on this. And in 1918, the spring edition of the virus was much less lethal than the fall edition of the virus. It went through a dozen passages.
That's what I'm most concerned about.
Yeah, and I don't know that people have really focused on that yet. Do you think they have?
No, they haven't. But you can see it. You know, what's interesting is you see it from the leadership now. I mean, I tell you, yesterday, Dr. Birx rattled me just individually, and I think that was her intent. I'll just be frank. But she was as blunt and as ambiguous as you could be, because we don't have all the answers on this yet. It is changing. There is apparently people younger than 60 are getting some nasty hospitalizations, and this could be 18 months. Right? I mean, you know, I know nobody likes to hear the words 18 months, and nobody is saying we're going to live this way for 18 months. But we're not going to live the other way in 6 months. You know, we're going to live a different way of life for quite some time. And I think that is, you know, we're going to live a life where there are senior hours only for quite some time. We're going to live a life where we maybe have half capacity in places for quite some time. And I do think that hasn't broken through yet. I thought yesterday in particular, and specifically from Deborah Birx, and maybe that's because Fauci wasn't up there as well, but she seemed to be the lone voice on this. But she really, I thought, was as sober as anybody I've heard up there other than Fauci.
Yeah, I had Dr. Fauci on Tuesday for 20 minutes, and we spent some time talking about this, and he just says the science doesn't tell us if it's going to get better or get worse. It could go either way. We just don't know. Chuck, I got a funny question.
That's the lack of reassurance. That lack of reassurance this week, and I appreciate the honesty from all these guys, but that has been disconcerting, I'll be honest.
Yeah, we're not at the beginning of the end. We aren't even sure at the end of the beginning yet. We might be, but...
I asked our friend Dr. Fauci, I said, okay, if this were a hurricane, I know I can watch the radar, and maybe what we don't know is whether it's going to be a Category 1 or a Category 4, right? A Category 2 or a Category 5. I said, I understand we don't know what category it is, but we don't even know when does it come ashore. And it's like, and he says that's the hard part of predictions. It's why we won't go out there and say, okay, it'll be in 2 weeks that the hospitals are overrun. It could be tomorrow that the hospitals are overrun in one area, but it may be 2 months before the hospitals are overrun in another area. But the hospitals are going to get overrun. We just don't know when.
Yeah. Chuck, I want to ask you a unique question. You are, in my business, we have P1s, which are people who listen to every minute of every show. And there are about 2 million of those. And there are 4 million.
Right.
Yeah, God love them. I love my P1s.
Yeah.
You are a P1 sports fan. And I'm a P2. What is this doing to the P1 sports fan who is suddenly, it's like an addict who's been cut off? What are you doing?
So it's been really interesting, and my son sent me a text I think it was 2 nights ago, whatever, after we've gone to bed or whatever you want to call it. It's every day is the same day. He sent me this text. He goes, Dad, I keep checking ESPN for scores. It's annoyingly sad. And he's right. I'd been doing the same thing, where I just go in the app, just looking for something that isn't Corona, looking for something. I guess, thank God for NFL free agency. My son's never followed NFL free agency so closely, and it's been this odd respite. I mean, I was worried they were going to delay free agency, and part of me thought, well, they probably should. There's part of me like, you know what? Society needs a distraction. Tom Brady to the Buccaneers. Okay, I'll take that distraction for a half an hour. Let's dive into all the scenarios. I don't know if there's going to be a football season. I'll tell you another thing. My fantasy draft buddies we're still going to have our fantasy baseball draft in 2 weeks virtually, and at least it's a draft of some sort that we may not be able to watch games played for 2 months, but we're trying to fill the
Okay, number one, I want to suggest that NBC televise the Chuck Todd fantasy draft. I actually think that would.
We might have to. It might get balls, exactly.
I actually think you'd get millions of viewers. I think you'd get tens of millions of viewers, and your buddies would have to stay silent. But number two,
they would hate me forever.
I have never cared so much about. Look, the Browns signed Raiders safety Carl Joseph and Packers linebacker B.J. Goodson. I'm going to learn everything about B.J. Goodson today because I got. Hours and hours. So let's go to the news business. When all is said and done, the responsibility is great on someone like you with an elite. My 6 million are people going to work and people and moms staying at home with the kids and higher educated, higher income people. But you deal with especially an elite audience. What's your job when it comes to not only flattening the pandemic curve, but flattening the cruelty curve and flattening the partisanship curve, which I think is crucial right now?
Well, it's interesting. I'm certainly trying to make my cable hour, and certainly it's always been the case on Sunday, a sort of a polarization-free zone.
Yep.
As best I can.
I've noticed.
And it's just sort of like, look, I think there is time enough for recriminations. I think there's time enough for after-action reports. I think there's definitely, sometimes in the moment, there's time for accountability and questions. I think this testing issue is something that's just been a big failure, right? We know it's been a big failure. It's costing all of us, and I think everybody's acknowledging it's been a big problem. But I think how you go about covering it, you have to always keep your eye on the ball of keeping the public prepared and keeping the public informed. So there's that balance you try to strike, and that's what I've been trying to do, because I think we have to have as many eyeballs as possible watching.
Well done, well aimed, and I look forward to talking to you next week, Church. I'll be
brother.
back in studio with you in a week, and I look forward to it. I'm
no,
alone,
you
man.
won't.
I'm alone.
By the way, you're not. No. You're not going to be in studio.
Oh,
We are going. We are no more in person going forward.
Oh my goodness.
So we're going to be. I still will have you on, but it will be virtual, my friend.
Well, luckily I have the camera right here, so we'll look forward to that. Chuck Todd in a week, and in the meantime, talk to you next week. Chuck Todd of Meet the Press every day at 5. Watch it. It is what I'm talking about. Don't go anywhere, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt inside the ReliefFactor.com studio. Reminding you, sign up for Daybreak Insider to get just every new bit of news you need every morning. Go to daybreakinsider.com. It's the best overall center-right news source in the morning, daybreakinsider.com. Joined now by former Missouri Senator Jim Talent. Morning, Senator. How are you?
I'm asymptomatic, so that's good.
Is the whole family good?
Everybody's good. We have my 89-year-old mother-in-law who deals with us, or who lives with us. So we are thinking about, the future and the next few months, and how to protect her and everybody else. So we're in one of those situations where we have some high risk, people, and so this is going to affect us differently than others. But everybody is getting accustomed to this and is making decisions, and I think people are better and better able to make decisions as they learn more and more.
That's it. I think America was knocked to its knees. It's getting back up. Now, Senator, I want to touch about the stimulus bill, specifically the defense industry. I've talked with David Deptula and Mitt Romney this morning, and I'll talk with John Cornyn after this about forward funding acquisition, because if they push the money out to, say, Northrop Grumman for the B-21 or to whoever builds the Columbia class, if they just forward appropriate all the money for all of the planes and ships, that will send a signal that will reverberate down the supply chain. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it would be great. When they passed the stimulus bill in 2009, remember the stimulus? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, whatever you thought about that as economic policy, and I didn't think much of it, had they gone and actually spent that on the armed forces, we would have gotten some things we really needed for it. So now is a tremendous opportunity, and you want to create jobs or sustain jobs, good jobs that reverberate, have a multiplier effect within the community. This is a great chance. Now, as you know, there's a lot of things we can just buy, where we can just ramp up production. But you're right. We're going to have to do some interesting, in some cases, difficult things in terms of forward funding, as you put it, or long lead appropriations. But those can be done, and the appropriators need to think creatively in how they're going to do it.
Well, the way to do it, I just want to be blunt, is you say to Northrop Grumman, we need 180 B-21s. That will cost about $90 billion. Here is $90 billion. Put it, you are managing that investment, and you owe us 180 B-21s. That signal would reverberate down their supply chain so dramatically that everybody involved in that supply chain would know they had a job for 15 years, Jim Talent.
Yeah, I think there's no reason in principle it can't be done that way. Everybody's going to have to examine how they've been doing things. And there have been proposals for appropriations reform, particularly regarding defense, for a long, long time. And the committees have resisted it because they like to do year-by-year things. Now, they will do multi-year packages and that sort of thing, because what Northrop Grumman has to believe and have absolute confidence is that the money is there. Okay, and you're saying one way to do it, in essence, just create pools of money and say it's not going to be taken for anything else. But they have to believe you won't take that money back then.
That's why you have to give it to them. You have to actually give it to them and then threaten to sue them for recovery if they don't deliver.
Yeah, and whether you can do that or not, you can do the same things effectively if you think innovatively. So the idea is a good one. What they're going to do here, okay, they're going to provide just direct help to individuals, mostly workers, but not only that. I mean, there are other people who are really hurt by this unusually. And they're going to provide cash to them. They're trying to figure out exactly how to do that. And then they have to provide relief for business. And they're going to start, I think, with programs that they know. Disaster relief programs are going to adjust those. There are programs out there for companies that have been hurt by illegal foreign dumping, for example, trade sort of relief. They'll work with the models they know. They'll adjust them. But you're right. They have to do some new things as well, and this would be a great one.
And the 500 employee limit, it's just not smart. I mean, there are restaurant chains. I know them. I have no stock in them, no financial interest. They got thousands of employees. All of their chains are shuttered. They don't qualify.
Right. And this is the difficulty with this, is translating the impulse that I think people will agree on into something that's effective. Because as you know, some of those chains operate through franchises. Some of them are corporate. And we have to adjust. We can't expect the market to all of a sudden change how it organizes itself.
Everybody needs you the bridge loan. Everybody needs 2 months of revenue, and everybody needs it now. Jim Talent, always a pleasure. Follow him at Jim Talent on Twitter. Follow me to Arthur Brooks next, America.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio, sequestered inside the Beltway, and I will be for weeks. I'm joined now by Arthur Brooks, who I assume is in Cambridge, Massachusetts, as he teaches now at Harvard, and, of course, maybe he's back in D.C. Where are you, Arthur?
I am in Brookline, Massachusetts, in my bunker, in my home, which is 2.5 miles from Harvard, so next to Cambridge.
Is everybody in the Brooks family fine?
Yes, we're all fine. We're all spread out. I have a son who's he's quarantined in Princeton, where he's graduating at what has now become a correspondence school, Princeton University. I have a son who's in the Marine Corps, who is at Parris Island, South Carolina, not allowed to leave, and my daughter's here with us.
I was unaware that Princeton was a degree-granting institution.
Well, the real question is if any of us are degree-granting institutions at this moment. We're doing all of our classes at Harvard online as well.
Arthur, what I wanted to talk to you about, along with Dennis Prager, and I've taken a stab at it, but you were really an expert on happiness, which also makes you an expert on fear. And I'd like, am I right about that?
Well, fear is not the opposite of happiness. Fear is the opposite of love. And love is the nuclear fuel of happiness. So you're pretty close. People are very, very fearful right now, and therein lies some of the solutions to our problems.
That's what I want you. You have the floor. I knew this would be a gold mine of wisdom. Tell us what to do about fear.
Well, so what's going on right now is that most people are not afraid they're going to get sick. Most people are not afraid they're going to die. They're afraid of the uncertainty. They're afraid of, they know that their stock portfolio is going to come back. They're not so stupid that they're selling their stocks. They know they're not going to retire penniless. The problem is they don't know what's going to happen in the next month, the next 2 months, the next 6 months. And that uncertainty naturally brings fear. If you're suffering from fear, you have to recognize it. And the only solution to that is to surround yourself with love. Love conquers, perfect love drives out fear. That's the first letter of St. John.
And so how do you do that?
Well, that's my column in the Washington Post this weekend, as a matter of fact. And there are a bunch of different ways to do it. And the key thing to keep in mind is that one of the reasons that people suffer when they're in their homes alone, or when they're quarantining, or as we now say awkwardly, social distancing, which is a term I hope will kill forever after this is over. The problem with that is that we're missing a neurotransmitter, a hormone in the brain called oxytocin. This is a neurotransmitter that's intensely pleasurable that comes about from touch and from eye contact. And what that does is it basically signals to the brain that there is love in your life, and that will drive out your fear of uncertainty, fear of the unknown. But you have to stimulate it manually when you're not getting it naturally. So this is the key thing that we have to keep in mind for Americans right now, who are right now that they're social distancing. In a few days, we'll probably all be sheltering in place, as far as we all know. By national order. I mean, some people think that, at least. And if that's the case, we have to spend more time actually making actual eye contact when we talk. We need to stop using social media and start using Skype and FaceTime to talk to people so we can actually see them in their eyes. And every person in your house needs therapeutically 20 seconds of hugging every 2 hours. This is a prescription from your social scientist friend, Dr. Arthur Brooks.
Now, you're serious. I want people to understand this is a genuine, actual, physiological prescription.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oxytocin is no joke. Oxytocin is really one of the reasons that people feel that life is worth living. It's the explosion of pleasure that you get when you see an old friend, when you see your child, when you see your child born for the first time, when you see the person with whom you're in love. And it comes from eye contact and touch, and we don't get enough of it when we change our behaviors and become isolated. Therefore, we have to therapeutically look for occasions to get this love. This will make us have a much better time. We'll be much more comfortable, and most importantly, this is what will eradicate the kind of visceral fear of uncertainty that we're feeling right now.
Now, this really makes me worried about seniors who are widows or widowers. You know, I'm always with the fetching Mrs. Hewitt, whether virtually or together. She's on one coast right now. I'm here, but we talk like 20 times a day. Often on Facebook, I FaceTime my grandkids. Tony Fauci told me I can't go see them, but I talk to them. So I get that. Mm-hmm. But what about a senior who can't receive visitors and isn't really equipped to use social media?
So that's a much bigger problem. And one side point on that, by the way, I was talking to Jim Toohey, who ran the space-based offices for W. He's now running a great nonprofit in D.C. called Aging with Dignity, and he made this point to me yesterday. He said, all the things that people are feeling right now about isolation and loneliness, that's what a lot of seniors feel all the time. We're going to suffer through it for a month. They suffer through it through years. What can we do to alleviate that for them? And most importantly, what can we do about it later for our brothers and sisters who are older and tend to be more isolated? To begin with, the senior centers where people live relatively isolated, if they're living together, they need not to be isolated from one another. That's the important thing. If they're hunkering down, they should hunker down together. That's important. The second thing is that senior centers and families who have relatively isolated elderly family members need to equip them more with technology right now. It's very important. I mean, I realize that they're relatively uncomfortable with it, but if you can, find a way such that you can see each other face to face, even if it's virtually. This will be incredibly important for the quality of life of senior citizens, and by the way, of all the people who are listening to us as well.
Now, Arthur Brooks, I have been preaching a little bit, and it's just Tony Fauci, by the way, is an extraordinary Catholic. I don't know if you've noticed that, have you? He's just so Catholic. Yeah. He's completely Catholic. And
he was great on your show, by the way. He was phenomenal on your show.
Yeah, he doesn't care about money. I love the guy. I just love the guy. But he conveyed to me that in the back of my mind, the reason we like him, he's not partisan and he's always kind. And so while we have to flatten the curve of the virus spread, I've taken to saying we also have to flatten the cruelty curve and we have to flatten the partisanship curve during this period of time. And I actually have stayed off of Twitter because I found after one day, it's a cesspool of cruelty. It's not good for people who are alone.
Yeah, no, the truth is, it's never good. Even if we don't have a pandemic, even if we're not sheltering in place, stay off social media. The data are in. It's just incontrovertibly true that if you're on Twitter or any social media for more than half an hour a day, the longer you're on it, the lonelier you'll get. It's empty calories. It's like eating French fries and hamburgers when you're hungry. You don't get enough nutrients, so you stay hungry even as you get fatter. Lonely people, they binge on social media and wind up lonelier. The reason that people are so terrible to each other on social media is because they're lonely. This is poison. We need to stay away from it.
Now, I also want to talk generally about the media because people listen to you, Arthur. I think our jobs are to ensure, inform, and encourage. That is not typically media in the age in which we live, but to assure that we'll be here tomorrow and America will be free and the world will survive. To inform how to social distance, your term of not preference, but nevertheless useful, and to encourage to what you just did. You've been very encouraging. What do you think media's job is?
Media's job right now, of course, is to do the things that we're talking about, but also to give people solutions and to encourage them in a way that does not divide them from the other. Remember, if this were a war, if this were World War II, and this is a kind of a war, we would be banding together. The greatest time in American unity in my lifetime was right after 9/11, where people were really banding together, where Democrats and Republicans just realized how stupidly little these differences were. The main reason that we're not achieving that as well as we should right now, I believe, is because there's a profit motive. It's sort of the outrage industrial complex in this country, where people are getting famous and rich and getting clicks and followers on the basis of dividing each other. It's a very profitable business. It's absolutely time in media and politics, and on social media in particular, for people to abandon that and for all the rest of us to rebel, to say, look, no dividers. I'm sorry. You notice that it's not a coincidence that suddenly the country is turning away from politicians who are being dividers, who are naturally dividers, who are telling us that we need to hate our neighbors. We don't want that right now, and media can play a big role and actually be at the vanguard of changing American culture, of bending the curve of hatred, as you so appropriately pointed out, toward greater unity as we come out of this crisis.
It's the cruelty curve. It is Twitter's fentanyl is cruelty. And but the other side of that is, and I want to close on this, the thing that went viral this week that I loved were two youngsters playing cellos outside the window of an older person. Everybody wins. The kids, the senior, and the people who watch the video. We got to encourage that, Arthur.
Absolutely. And all of us can find a way to do this. Say to yourself, set aside 2 hours at the end of the day today with Skype or FaceTime, at very least with the phone, and make a list of people that you've been thinking, I need to get in touch with that person because I want to anyway, and systematically go through your list. You'll be happier. They'll be happier. Who knows? Look, if we're hugging each other more, if there's more direct eye contact, if there's less social media use, if we're more in communication with each other, we could come out of this thing better than we went in as people and as a country.
Oh, you made me feel better, Arthur. You're the one of the people I needed to talk to. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you. God bless you and your family and all of our listeners. We're going to be okay.
You too, and you are right. He is right. He is right. Let me quickly tell you, though, do some other stuff for yourself. Self-care, exercise, walk, run. You can't go to the gym? All right, I understand gym rats are just sad. You don't have a Peloton? You don't need one. All you need is to walk or run. Or trundle, which is that area in between, which I am known for, which is why I use relieffactor.com every day. Got my 7 miles in last week, my long run. I don't know that I'm going to do it this week because it's raining in the Beltway this morning, and it was supposed to be today, and I hate to run in the rain. Hate it. I'm 64. I don't like to do it anymore. I did it when I was young. Hate it. But I love relieffactor.com, and I take it every day. And you should too if you're walking and running and you got the aches and pains associated with exercise or just aging. It has Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. 4 natural supplements support the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. I'm in the relieffactor.com studio. You can try it today. Go get it. It will be very useful with your new exercise regime. Now, let me also tell you about andrewandtodd.com. You have a chance to do a mortgage checkup right now. 888-888-1172. If you're at home alone doing nothing, go to their website. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They're brokers. They're lenders. They're not brokers. They lend people money. Sierra Pacific Mortgage, I can't remember how big it is. It's giant, but it's not one of the bigs. They're very high touch, virtual high touch. They don't have to see you. They'll tell you in this period of time, it's great. You don't have to lock. You don't have to get an appraisal. Walk right up to the starting line, get it all set so that when rates go to their natural, very low function after a crisis, when the feds begin to buy mortgage-backed securities, you'll be ready to go. AndrewandTodd.com, 888-888-1172. Finally, let me make an appeal on behalf of military families. HonorBoundCoffee.com. You want to get coffee delivered at home and then with every sip support the military families across the United States who are bearing the burden? Subscribe to HonorBoundCoffee.com. It's great coffee, 4 different brews, 4 different grinds. One great way to serve the military. Right now, 100% of their profits going to serving military families, and they've started with the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund. They're going to go to the military YMCAs. They're going to add other groups. You need to subscribe to HonorBoundCoffee.com. Get your coffee delivered at home. Never buy it again. And you know what? Coffee companies will be fine. I got 6 million listeners, and if all 6 million of you get your coffee from HonorBoundCoffee.com, that would be great, and it won't bother Folgers at all. But you will help the men and women and their mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, spouses who are serving you every day. Military families deserve your help. HonorBoundCoffee.com. John Cornyn is next, America. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, joined now by one of our favorite senators, John Cornyn of Texas. Good morning, Senator. How are you? How's your family? Everybody feeling okay?
Everybody's healthy, and we're on the job trying to deal with this public health emergency and also the economic fallout from it.
Now, Senator, you know the Senate well. You've been the whip. You were one of the senior leaders. You were also Supreme Court Justice of Texas. You know how difficult it is to write good laws. Where do we stand? We are blessed by your leadership, John Thunes and Mitch McConnell, but where are we in the process?
Well, the president signed the second installment of legislation we passed. The first was the $8.3 billion, which was designed to jumpstart vaccine research and expand the access to testing kits and the like, provide some other emergency funds. The second one had to do with people who were quarantined at home and worried about their paycheck, as well as the food banks and food supply generally. The third one is going to be focused primarily on two things. One is getting cash into the hands of people who have been laid off through no fault of their own because of the impact on the hospitality industry, the airlines, et cetera. And then the second part is to deal with some of these systemic challenges, like the airline industry, for example, that if they don't get the help that they need, they'll go bankrupt pretty quick.
You know, Senator, broadcast is on the brink. Don't know if you know that. Broadcast is on all the advertisers. My show's fine. My advertisers love me, and they talk to 6 million. But the radio stations out there in Texas that are 3 or 4 chain radio stations, they're going to go under.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Congress can do as much as it can do, but there are always going to be people hurt by this downturn in the economy. J.P. Morgan was predicting a negative 4% growth the first quarter. I think they said to 14% in the second quarter. They expect a V-shaped bounce in the third and fourth quarter, but there's going to be a lot of pain in the interim.
Now, one of your friends and one of the people I love having on, Lindsay, he's using the wrong metric. This is not about how many employees a business has. It's about revenue interruption. And I think of some of these restaurant chains, and I have no money in them, and they're not my clients, et cetera. They've got thousands of employees. They won't qualify for 500 employees or less. That's the wrong metric. It's lost revenue. Revenue interruption is what needs attention.
Well, I agree that that is important as well. I talked to a friend of mine who employs tens of thousands of people in the hotel business, and he said their occupancy is down around 9%. And so we're trying to figure different mechanisms to get cash to people, whether it's deferring their filing with the IRS and paying their taxes up by April the 15th, or the Fed is using its authorities to provide backstops to money market funds and the like. So we're trying to figure out what are all the tools in the toolbox, and frankly, I think we'll end up using all of them before we're done.
Now, Senator, I like to lobby when I have a chance. Whatever you're going to spend, double it. Honestly, I mean that, double it. And then I think you ought to forward appropriate our strategic systems like the B-21, the Columbia class, by which I mean you say to Northrop Grumman, what do 180 B-21s cost? Here's all that money. You bank it. You steward it. Your supply chain will get a strong signal through all the noise that they've got jobs for 10 years. Ditto whoever makes the Columbia class. Is there any chance that Congress will think out of the box and do the kind of things that will send that kind of signal that will get through the noise?
Yes, I think that is being discussed with some of my colleagues. I think the Pentagon has a wish list of about $19 billion, which compared to the rest of the money we're going to spend is a drop in the bucket. But these are for things that they say we need to keep our country safe, things like ships and airplanes. And
by the way, I heard about that, and I said they're not thinking either. They've got to forward appropriate the entire acquisition of the F-35 so that everyone knows it's not just this year you get relief. You're in the business for 10 years. The economy will come back roaring if you just trust them. But I know Congress hates to give up the year-to-year authority.
Yeah, that's true. I think we're trying to figure out how to deal with this immediate emergency, and long-term thinking is not our forte here, particularly we're in the midst of a crisis like this, but I take your point.
All right, last question. There's a lot of talent out there. Bob Iger, for example, just left Disney. We need special government employees like World War II who will serve for $1 a year. And, put Iger over at OPM, which just lost their head. Are you guys thinking in terms of stuff like that, bringing in talent?
Well, of course, I think that's probably more suited to the executive branch. My impression is that they're getting a lot of advice. I'm certainly getting a lot of advice, and as I reach out to constituents in Texas and elsewhere, try to figure out what to do. I don't think there's going to be any shortage of talent, volunteer and otherwise. So I think that's a good point, though. There's a lot of very talented people that can help the government at this time of an emergency.
Yeah, in WW2, they had $1 a year people who ran whole industries, and we got lots of them. We got lots of people, and luckily you got Mitt Romney, Rick Scott, and a bunch of people like you and Chuck Grassley, legislators plus private sector experience. John Cornyn, we're in great shape. We will bounce back. Thank you for working the hours you're working. I really appreciate it, John Cornyn. Hey, America, we're off of our knees. We're getting back up. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Adam, Ben, Generalissimo, thank you all. Thank you for listening. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.